The rain hammered against the hospital windows like bullets. I pressed my face against the cold glass, watching the storm rage outside while my own storm raged within. In my arms, Harmony slept peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling in the rhythm that had become my only anchor to sanity. Behind me I could hear them talking. Whispering. Planning. She's weak now, Catherine Murphy's voice cut through the air like a blade. Look at her. She can barely stand after the surgery. How can she take care of our son? Heather is perfect for Cyrus, Murphy Simon added, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction. Young, healthy, beautiful. Everything Amanda is not anymore. I closed my eyes, feeling the stitches pull at my side where they had taken my kidney. The kidney that was now keeping my husband alive. The husband who hadn't spoken to me in 3 days. Thunder crashed overhead and Harmony stirred in my arms. I held her tighter, knowing that this storm outside was nothing compared to what was coming. What they were planning. What they didn't know was that I was listening. I was always listening. And I was already planning too. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. 6 months earlier my life was perfect. Or so I thought. Cyrus Simon and I had been married for 4 years. We lived in a beautiful house on Willowbrook Drive, with white picket fences and rose bushes that bloomed every spring. I was a freelance graphic designer working from home so I could take care of Harmony, who had just turned 3. Life was simple. Life was good. Cyrus worked at a prestigious law firm downtown. Every morning I would make him breakfast, kiss him goodbye at the door and watch him drive away in his black BMW. Every evening he would come home to find dinner waiting, Harmony playing with her toys, and me ready to hear about his day. You're the perfect wife, he would tell me, pulling me close after Harmony went to bed. I don't know what I'd do without you. I believed him then. I believed every word. The Simon family had money. Old money. Cyrus's parents, Catherine and Murphy Simon, lived in a mansion across town. They tolerated me well enough, though I always felt like I was being measured against some invisible standard I could never quite reach. Amanda is adequate, I once heard Catherine tell her bridge club friends. She keeps our son happy and she gave us a granddaughter. That's all we can ask for, I suppose. Adequate. The word stung, but I pushed it aside. I had Cyrus. I had Harmony. I had everything I needed. I should have known that perfect lives don't exist. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was making pancakes when Cyrus stumbled down the stairs, his face pale and drawn. I don't feel good, he said, collapsing into a kitchen chair. You've been working too hard, I said, rushing to feel his forehead. He was burning up. Let me call your office. You're staying home today. But it wasn't just a fever. Over the next few days Cyrus got worse. Much worse. The fatigue became constant. His skin turned yellow. He could barely eat. Daddy sick? Harmony asked, her little face scrunched with worry. Daddy's going to be fine, I told her, but my voice shook with uncertainty. Dr. Howard delivered the news on a Friday afternoon. Chronic kidney disease, advanced stage. Years of untreated high blood pressure had damaged Cyrus's kidneys beyond repair. He needs a transplant, Dr. Howard explained as we sat in his sterile office. Without one he has maybe 6 months. The room spun around me. 6 months. My husband, the father of my child, had 6 months to live. I'll get tested, I said immediately. I'll be his donor. Dr. Howard looked skeptical. Mrs. Simon, organ donation is a serious decision. You need to think about this carefully. Consider all your options. There's nothing to consider, I said firmly. Test me. I know I'm compatible. And I was. O positive, just like Cyrus. Perfect match. Perfect wife, perfect donor. The testing took weeks. Blood work, psychological evaluations, meetings with social workers. Everyone kept asking me if I was sure, if I understood the risks, if I knew what I was getting into. Of course I'm sure, I would tell them. He's my husband. I love him. Love. Such a simple word for such a complicated feeling. Catherine and Murphy were thrilled when they heard the news. Amanda dear, you're so brave, Catherine said, though her eyes were calculating. So selfless. Cyrus is lucky to have you. Murphy clapped me on the shoulder. You're doing the right thing, girl. Family takes care of family. Family. I clung to that word like a life preserver. The surgery was scheduled for May 15th. 2 weeks before, Cyrus seemed to rally. His color improved slightly and he had more energy. "I can't believe you're doing this for me," he said one night as we lay in bed. "Giving up part of yourself to save me." "It's not giving up," I whispered. "Sharing. That's what married people do." He was quiet for a long time. So quiet I thought he had fallen asleep. "Amanda," he said finally, "if something happens to me, if the surgery doesn't work, promise me you'll take care of Harmony. Promise me you'll be strong." "Nothing's going to happen," I said. "We're going to get through this together." But as I lay there in the darkness, listening to his labored breathing, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was already happening. Something I couldn't control. May 15th dawned gray and drizzly. I woke up early, kissed a sleeping Harmony goodbye, and drove myself to the hospital. Cyrus had been admitted the night before for pre-surgical preparation. The pre-op area buzzed with activity. Nurses checked my vitals, doctors explained the procedure one more time, and anesthesiologists prepared their equipment. Through it all I felt strangely calm. "You don't have to do this," Dr. Howard said as they wheeled me toward the operating room. "Even now you can change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind," I said. "Save my husband." The last thing I remember is the anesthesia mask covering my face and the bright lights of the operating room fading to black. I woke up to pain. Searing, burning pain that radiated from my left side through my entire body. For a moment I couldn't remember where I was or what had happened. Then it came back. The surgery. The kidney. Cyrus. "How is he?" I croaked to the nurse checking my IV. "The recipient is doing well," she said with a professional smile. Both surgeries were successful. Relief flooded through me, stronger than any painkiller. He was alive. The kidney was working. I had saved him. But where was he? For the next 3 days I lay in my hospital bed waiting for Cyrus to visit. The nurses said he was in the ICU recovering from his own surgery. Too weak for visitors, they explained. Catherine and Murphy came by once briefly. "The surgery was a complete success," Murphy announced as if he had performed it himself. "Cyrus is responding beautifully to the new kidney." "Your kidney," Catherine added almost as an afterthought. "Thank you, dear." They stayed for exactly 10 minutes. Then they were gone, rushing off to see their son. Their precious son, who was too weak to see his wife but apparently strong enough for his parents. Harmony visited with my neighbor, Mrs. Cooper, who had been watching her during the surgery. "Mommy hurt?" Harmony asked, her small hand touching the bandages on my side. "Mommy gave Daddy a present," I explained, "to make him feel better." "What kind of present?" "How do you explain organ donation to a 3-year-old? "A special present," I said. "One that only Mommy could give." She seemed satisfied with that answer and curled up next to me in the narrow hospital bed. For a few hours I felt peace. Whatever was happening with Cyrus, whatever was keeping him away, it would sort itself out once we were both home and recovered. I was wrong. On the 4th day a different nurse came to check on me. Younger, less careful with her words. "Your husband seems to be doing great," she said while changing my bandages. "I saw him walking in the hall yesterday with his family. And that pretty young woman." My blood turned cold. "What pretty young woman?" The nurse's face went red. "Oh, but I assume she was family too. She's been there every day." Every day. While I lay here alone, recovering from surgery to save his life, Cyrus had been entertaining a pretty young woman. "What does she look like?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Tall, blonde, maybe mid-20s? She seems very close to your husband." I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. There had to be an explanation. A colleague from work, maybe. A friend of the family. Someone innocent. But deep in my gut I knew better. I had always known better. Dr. Howard discharged me on day 5 with a list of restrictions and follow-up appointments. No heavy lifting, no driving for 2 weeks, no strenuous activity for 6 weeks. "Your body has been through trauma," he explained. "You need time to heal both physically and emotionally. Organ donation takes a toll in ways people don't always expect." I nodded, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about the pretty young woman. I was thinking about Cyrus, who still hadn't come to see me. I was thinking about the storm I could feel building on the horizon. Mrs. Cooper drove Harmony and me home from the hospital. The house felt different somehow. colder, empty in a way that had nothing to do with Cyrus's absence. That night, as I lay in our king-size bed with Harmony curled against my good side, I heard a car in the driveway. My heart leaped. Cyrus was coming home. But the footsteps on the front porch were too light. The key in the lock turned too carefully. This wasn't Cyrus. "Hello," I called out. Catherine Simon appeared in the bedroom doorway. Her expression was strange. Guilty. Determined. "Amanda, dear, we need to talk." Catherine perched on the edge of the armchair across from the bed, her posture rigid and formal. She looked like she was attending a business meeting rather than visiting her recovering daughter-in-law. "Cyrus is doing wonderfully," she began, her tone carefully neutral. "The doctors say the kidney is functioning perfectly. You saved his life, Amanda. The family is grateful." Grateful. Not thankful, not indebted. Grateful, as if I had done them a small favor. "Where is he?" I asked. "Why hasn't he come home? Why hasn't he visited me?" Catherine's mouth tightened. "He's still weak, of course. The surgery was traumatic for him. He needs time to recover properly." "I had the same surgery," I pointed out. "I'm home." "Yes, well." Catherine smoothed her skirt with unnecessary precision. "You've always been sturdy, resilient. Cyrus is more delicate. Delicate. Like a flower that needed special care. Not like his sturdy, resilient wife who could donate organs and be expected to bounce back immediately." "When is he coming home?" I pressed. "That's what I wanted to discuss with you." Catherine's voice took on a businesslike tone. "The family thinks it might be best if Cyrus stayed with us for a while during his recovery. Our house is larger, quieter. We have household staff to help with his needs." My heart sank. "His needs? I can take care of him. I'm his wife." "Are you?" The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. "Are you really in any condition to care for anyone right now? Look at yourself, Amanda. You can barely get out of bed." I looked down at myself. The hospital gown I still wore, the bandages visible beneath the thin fabric, the way I was lying propped up by pillows because sitting up straight was still too painful. "I'll recover," I said. "In a few days I'll be fine." "A few days?" Catherine's laugh was sharp. "Oh, my dear. You have no idea what you've done to yourself, do you? You've given away part of your body. You'll never be the same again." The words hit like physical blows. "What are you talking about?" "Dr. Howard said." "Dr. Howard is paid to be optimistic," Catherine interrupted. "But the truth is you're damaged now. Weakened. You'll never be able to keep up with Cyrus's needs the way you used to." I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. This woman, whose son's life I had just saved, was telling me I was damaged goods. "Cyrus needs a strong partner," Catherine continued. "Someone who can support him as he builds his career. Someone who can keep up with the social demands of his position. Someone who can give him more children without risk." "More children?" My voice came out as a whisper. "The surgery has complications, Amanda. Pregnancy could be dangerous for you now. Possibly fatal." "Did the doctors mention that?" They had. During one of the pre-surgical consultations, Dr. Howard had mentioned that future pregnancies would need to be carefully monitored, that there would be increased risks. But he had said it was manageable, not impossible. Catherine, however, was making it sound like a death sentence. "So you see," she continued, "it's really for the best. Cyrus will stay with us until he's fully recovered. You focus on getting better. And then, well, then you can both decide what's best for your future." The subtext was clear. The future she was envisioning didn't include me in it. "I want to see my husband," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Of course, dear. When you're both feeling stronger. When the time is right." She stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Amanda, it might be best if you didn't call Cyrus for a few days. The doctors want him to rest, avoid any stress or emotional complications. You understand." She left, and the house fell silent except for Harmony's soft breathing beside me. I lay there in the growing darkness, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Emotional complications. That's what I was now. The wife who had saved her husband's life was now an emotional complication he needed to avoid. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my mind raced with questions. Who was the pretty young woman the nurse had mentioned? Why was Catherine so eager to keep Cyrus away from me? And why did I feel like I had just been politely fired from my own marriage? The next morning brought no answers, only more questions. Mrs. Cooper knocked on the door at 8 o'clock with coffee and fresh muffins. "How are you feeling, honey?" she asked, settling Harmony at the kitchen table with coloring books. "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted. "That's normal after major surgery. You need to be patient with yourself." He poured coffee into 2 mugs and sat across from me. "Have you heard from Cyrus?" I shook my head. "His mother says he's still too weak for visitors." Mrs. Cooper's expression darkened. "Too weak? Honey, I saw that boy at the grocery store yesterday. He was walking around just fine, laughing with some blonde girl. Didn't look weak to me." The coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the kitchen floor. Hot liquid splashed across my bare feet, but I barely felt it. "What blonde girl?" "I don't know, sweetie. Pretty thing, maybe 25? They seemed very friendly." Mrs. Cooper helped me clean up the coffee and broken ceramic, but I could barely focus. My mind was spinning with the implications. Cyrus was well enough to go grocery shopping with another woman, but too weak to see his wife? "Mrs. Cooper," I said carefully, "would you mind watching Harmony for an hour? I need to go somewhere." "Honey, you shouldn't be driving yet," the doctor said. "I'll be careful," I promised. I need to see something." The Simon family mansion sat on 5 acres of perfectly manicured lawn on the east side of town. I had been there countless times for family dinners, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. I knew every inch of that house, including the best places to park if you wanted to see without being seen. I pulled my little Honda into a grove of trees across the street and waited. The pain medication made everything feel slightly fuzzy, but my vision was clear enough to see the black BMW in the circular driveway. Cyrus's car. And parked next to it, a red Mustang convertible I didn't recognize. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:30 the front door opened and Cyrus stepped out. He looked healthy. More than healthy, he looked better than he had in months. His color was good, his posture strong. He was laughing at something someone had said. That someone turned out to be a tall, blonde woman in her mid-20s. She was stunning in the way that only young, wealthy, carefree women can be. Designer clothes, perfect hair, teeth that had never known financial hardship. She was everything I was not. And from the way Cyrus was looking at her, she was everything he wanted. I watched them walk to the red Mustang. I watched him open the door for her like a gentleman. I watched her laugh and touch his arm in a way that was definitely not casual friendship. I watched my husband, the man whose life I had saved 6 days ago, kiss another woman in his parents' driveway. The pain that shot through me had nothing to do with surgical incisions. This was a different kind of wound, deeper and more devastating than anything a scalpel could create. I started the Honda and drove home in a daze. In my driveway, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what to do with the knowledge I now carried. Mrs. Cooper was waiting with worried eyes and gentle questions I couldn't answer. Harmony was napping on the couch, her small body curled around her favorite stuffed elephant. Looking at my daughter, I made a decision. Whatever was happening between Cyrus and the blonde woman, whatever game Catherine Simon was playing, I needed to protect Harmony. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to find out exactly what I was up against. Recovery from kidney donation is supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks. I gave myself 3 days to wallow, then started planning. Mrs. Cooper had connections throughout the city. Her late husband had been a police detective, and she still knew people who could find out things. When I asked her to help me investigate my own husband, she didn't ask questions. "Some stones are better left unturned," she warned. "This stone is already turned," I replied. "I just need to see what's crawling underneath." The information came back in pieces over the next week. The blonde woman was Heather Stewart, 24 years old, daughter of a wealthy real estate developer. She had graduated from the local university with a degree in marketing and currently worked at her father's company. He had also been dating my husband for 3 months. 3 months. While I was getting tested to donate my kidney, while I was going to counseling sessions and medical appointments to save his life, Cyrus was building a relationship with another woman. But it got worse. "They're not trying to hide it," Mrs. Cooper reported after talking to her contacts. "They've been seen at restaurants, the country club, charity events. Everyone in their social circle knows about her." "Everyone except me," I said bitterly. "There's more, honey." Mrs. Cooper's expression was grim. "Word is, the Simon family is planning something. Something big." I felt cold despite the warm spring weather. What kind of something? I don't know yet. But my friend Betty works at the courthouse. She says Murphy Simon has been asking questions about divorce law. Specifically about custody arrangements and property division. Divorce. The word hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to keep Cyrus away from me during his recovery. They were planning to end our marriage entirely. There's something else, Mrs. Cooper continued. Betty says someone's been asking about you too. About your finances, your work history, your ability to support a child on your own. They're building a case against me, I realized. Looks that way. I spent the next few days thinking. Planning. Trying to figure out my next move. The smart thing would be to hire a lawyer, start my own divorce proceedings, try to protect my interests and ensure I got fair custody of Harmony. The smart thing would be to cut my losses and move on with my life. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling angry. Betrayed. Used. I was feeling like a woman who had given everything to save a man who was planning to throw her away. On Thursday morning, 2 weeks after the surgery, Cyrus finally came home. I heard the BMW in the driveway and my heart started racing. Despite everything I had learned, despite the evidence of his betrayal, part of me still hoped there was an explanation. That he would walk through the door, take me in his arms, and tell me it had all been a misunderstanding. Instead, he walked into the living room where I was playing blocks with Harmony, looked around like he was seeing the place for the first time and announced, "We need to talk." Harmony squealed with delight when she saw her father. "Daddy. Daddy home." She ran to him with the uninhibited joy that only 3-year-olds possess. Cyrus picked her up and hugged her, and for a moment his face softened. "Hey, princess. Daddy missed you. Daddy all better now? Mommy gave you special present." "Yes," Cyrus said, his eyes finding mine over Harmony's head. "Mommy gave Daddy a very special present." There was something cold in his expression. Something that made my blood run cold. "Harmony, why don't you go play in your room for a while?" I suggested. "Daddy and Mommy need to have a grown-up talk." She protested, but I promised her ice cream later and she eventually skipped off to her bedroom. The house fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. "You look good," I said because I didn't know what else to say. "Healthy. I feel good. The kidney is working perfectly." He sat down across from me, maintaining a careful distance. "The doctors say I should make a full recovery." "I'm glad." We stared at each other for a long moment. This man I had been married to for 4 years, whose child I had borne, whose life I had saved. He looked like a stranger. "Cyrus," I began, but he held up a hand to stop me. "Let me talk first," he said. "There are things we need to discuss. Things about our future." I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. "The surgery changed everything, Amanda. Not just physically but emotionally. Psychologically." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I almost died. That changes a man. It makes him reevaluate his priorities, his relationships, his entire life." "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm grateful for what you did. Don't think I'm not. You saved my life and I'll never forget that. But," I could hear the but coming like thunder before lightning. "But I've realized that gratitude isn't enough to build a marriage on. We've been living like roommates for months, Amanda. Going through the motions, pretending everything was fine when we both knew it wasn't." "I didn't know that," I said quietly. "Of course you did. You're not stupid. You must have felt the distance between us." Had I? Looking back, I could see signs. The way he'd started working later, the way our conversations had become perfunctory, the way he'd stopped really looking at me when we talked. But I had attributed all of that to his illness. To the stress of his diagnosis and the fear of dying. "I want a divorce, Amanda." The words hung in the air between us like a guillotine blade. A divorce. I repeated the words like they were foreign, incomprehensible. "It's for the best. For both of us. You deserve someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved, and I need to be free to find what I'm looking for." "What you're looking for?" My voice was getting stronger, sharper. "You mean who you're looking for? Like Heather Stewart." His face didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise maybe that I knew about her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Cyrus. I've seen you with her. I know you've been seeing her for months." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he shrugged as if his infidelity was a minor detail hardly worth discussing. "Heather is a friend." Someone who understands what I've been through. What you've been through. I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. What about what I've been through? I gave you my kidneys, Cyrus. I gave you part of my body to keep you alive. And I'm grateful, he repeated, but his tone was flat, dismissive. But that doesn't mean we have to stay married. If anything, it makes it more complicated. I don't want to spend the rest of my life feeling obligated to you. Obligated. The word hit me like a slap. 4 years of marriage, a child together, major surgery to save his life, and he felt obligated. What about Harmony? I asked. She'll be fine. Children adapt. We'll work out custody arrangements, visitation schedules. My parents have already spoken to their lawyers about setting up a trust fund for her education. Their lawyers. Of course. This had all been planned, choreographed, decided without my input. I want joint custody, I said. That might not be possible. What do you mean? Cyrus looked uncomfortable for the first time since he'd arrived. Amanda, you just had major surgery. The doctors say you'll never be fully healthy again. There are limitations now, risks. My parents are concerned about your ability to properly care for a 3-year-old. Your parents are concerned? I stood up despite the pain that shot through my side. Your parents who couldn't be bothered to visit me once in the hospital. Your parents who think I'm adequate on my best day. They care about Harmony's well-being. And what about my well-being? What about the fact that I'm her mother? Of course you're her mother. No one's trying to take her away from you completely. But primary custody, that might need to go to the parent who's better equipped to provide for her. The parent with money, he meant. The parent with family lawyers and trust funds and social connections. The parent who hadn't given up an organ to save his spouse's life. I stared at this man I had loved, this man I had sacrificed for, this man who was now calmly discussing taking my daughter away from me, and felt something shift inside me. Something cold and calculating and very, very angry. Get out, I said quietly. Amanda. Get out of my house. Now. It's not your house, he said, and there was the truth I had been waiting for. It's in my name. The mortgage, the deed, everything. Legally, you have no claim to it. I felt the walls closing in around me. The house I had decorated, the home I had built for our family, the place where I had recovered from surgery to save his life. None of it was mine. You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live, Cyrus continued, his voice businesslike now. That's fair, I think. Generous, even. Generous, I repeated. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. I'd recommend you get your own representation. He stood up, straightening his jacket. I'll send someone for my clothes tomorrow. He walked to the doorway, then turned back. For what it's worth, Amanda, I really am grateful. What you did, it was incredibly brave. Selfless. I just want you to know that. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the sound of the grandfather clock and my own ragged breathing. I sank back onto the couch, my hand pressed to the stitches in my side that were still tender, still healing. In my bedroom, I could hear Harmony playing with her dolls, making up stories about families who loved each other and stayed together forever. Stories that were nothing like real life. I sat there for a long time thinking about gratitude and obligation and betrayal. Thinking about how naive I had been to believe that love and sacrifice were enough. Thinking about Heather Stewart and her perfect smile and her red Mustang convertible. Thinking about revenge. Because if Cyrus Simon thought he could use me up and throw me away, if he thought he could take my kidney and my daughter and my life and walk away unscathed, he had another thing coming. I was Amanda Collins Simon. I had survived organ donation. I had saved a man's life. And I was about to show him exactly what he had thrown away. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked embarrassed to be serving them to a woman still recovering from surgery. I signed for them with hands that only trembled slightly, waited until Harmony was absorbed in her cartoons, then locked myself in the bathroom to read them. The legal language was dense and cold, reducing 4 years of marriage to a series of clauses and provisions. But the meaning was clear enough. Cyrus wanted everything. The house, the cars, the savings account, the investment portfolio I hadn't even known we had. He was willing to give me reasonable spousal support for 2 years and generous visitation rights with Harmony. Visitation rights. With my own daughter. The custody section was particularly brutal. It painted me as an unstable woman whose recent medical procedures had left her physically and emotionally compromised, and unable to provide adequate care for a minor child. There were medical reports attached that I had never seen before. Psychiatric evaluations suggesting I might be suffering from post-surgical depression. Financial statements showing that my freelance graphic design work brought in barely enough to support myself, let alone a child. They had built their case carefully, methodically. While I was focused on saving Cyrus's life, they were focused on destroying mine. At the bottom of the papers was a note from Cyrus's lawyer, suggesting that if I signed without contest, the process would be quicker and less painful for everyone involved, especially the child. The child. As if Harmony was a chess piece to be moved around the board rather than a little girl who needed her mother. I was still sitting on the bathroom floor, papers scattered around me, when Mrs. Cooper knocked on the front door. "Amanda? Honey, are you okay?" I stuffed the papers into a drawer and let her in. She took one look at my face and knew something had happened. "What is it?" "Divorce papers," I said simply. Her expression darkened. "Already?" That was fast, even for a snake like Cyrus Simon. "They want custody of Harmony," I said, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. "They're saying I'm unfit because of the surgery." "That's ridiculous. You're the best mother I know. But I'm poor. And single. And according to these papers, emotionally unstable." Mrs. Cooper sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." But that wasn't true. I did know. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. That afternoon, while Harmony napped, I called 3 divorce lawyers. The first 2 wanted retainers I couldn't afford. The third, a tired-sounding man named Reed, agreed to meet with me for a free consultation. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a check-cashing place. The waiting room had plastic chairs and magazines from 2 years ago. Not exactly the kind of high-powered legal representation that could go up against the Simon family lawyers. Reed was in his 60s with kind eyes and a rumpled suit. He listened patiently as I explained my situation, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Mrs. Simon," he said when I finished, "I'm going to be straight with you. This is going to be an uphill battle. Because I'm poor? Because they're rich? And because they've done their homework." He flipped through the papers I'd brought. "These medical reports, the financial statements, the character witnesses they've lined up. This isn't amateur hour. They've been planning this for months. So I should just give up? Let them take my daughter?" "I didn't say that. But you need to understand what you're up against. The Simon family has connections, resources, political influence. They can afford to drag this out for years if necessary. And I can't." "No, you can't." He leaned forward, his expression sympathetic but realistic. "Here's what I can offer you. I can negotiate for better visitation rights, maybe push for shared custody instead of their visitation-only proposal. I can fight for more generous spousal support, enough to help you get back on your feet. But I can't win. Winning and losing aren't always black and white in family court," Reed said carefully. "Sometimes it's about damage control." I left his office feeling more defeated than ever. Damage control. That's what my life had become. A series of small losses to be minimized rather than victories to be won. But as I drove home, something crystallized in my mind. The legal system might be rigged against me. The Simon family might have all the money and connections. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. 3 days later, Mrs. Cooper burst through my front door without knocking, her face flushed with outrage. "You need to see this," she said, thrusting her phone at me. On the screen was a social media post from someone named Jennifer Walsh. The photo showed a beautiful outdoor wedding ceremony, white chairs arranged in perfect rows, an archway of flowers, and a bride in designer lace walking down an aisle scattered with rose petals. The bride was Heather Stewart. The groom was my husband. "When was this posted?" I asked, my voice strangely calm. "An hour ago. The wedding was yesterday." Mrs. Cooper's voice shook with fury. "1 week, Amanda. 1 week after he served you divorce papers, he married someone else." I stared at the photos. There were dozens of them. Cyrus in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking happier than I had seen him in years. Heather radiant in a dress that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Catherine and Murphy Simon beaming with pride as they welcomed their new daughter-in-law. The same woman who had told me I was too weak and damaged to be a proper wife was now embracing my replacement with open arms. "Amanda." Mrs. Cooper's voice seemed to come from very far away. Say something. I scrolled through more photos. The reception looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements, a multi-tiered cake that was a work of art. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's elite. Everyone who mattered was there to celebrate Cyrus Simon's new beginning. His fresh start. His second chance at life, made possible by my kidney. Amanda, you're scaring me. I looked up at Mrs. Cooper and realized I was smiling. Not a happy smile, but something sharp and cold and dangerous. I'm fine, I said. Actually, I'm better than fine. Honey, this is devastating. I know you must be. I'm angry, I said, still scrolling through the wedding photos. But not devastated. Do you want to know why? Mrs. Cooper nodded uncertainly. Because they just made a huge mistake. I set the phone down carefully. They got overconfident. Sloppy. What do you mean? How can Cyrus be married to Heather if he's still married to me? Mrs. Cooper blinked. But, the divorce papers were served to me 5 days ago. In this state, there's a mandatory waiting period before a divorce can be finalized. Minimum 30 days, usually longer if it's contested. I felt that cold smile spreading across my face again. Cyrus Simon just committed bigamy. Oh my God. Oh, it gets better. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. Bigamy is a felony in this state. Punishable by up to 5 years in prison and automatic grounds for voiding the marriage. Are you going to report him? Not yet. First, I'm going to let him enjoy his honeymoon. Mrs. Cooper stared at me like she'd never seen me before. What are you planning, Amanda? I'm planning to give my dear husband exactly what he deserves. That night, after Harmony was asleep, I began my real investigation. Not just into Cyrus's affair but into everything. His finances, his business dealings, his family's connections. If they wanted to play hardball, I was going to learn the rules of their game. What I found was interesting. The Simon family wealth was old, but it wasn't as solid as they pretended. Murphy Simon's real estate investments had taken a hit during the recent market downturn. Several of his properties were underwater, and he had been quietly refinancing to stay afloat. Catherine's social standing was built largely on appearances. The charity boards, the country club memberships, the lavish entertaining, it all cost money. Money that was increasingly tight. But most interesting of all was Cyrus himself. His position at the law firm was more precarious than he had let on. Several of his clients had filed complaints about missed deadlines and inadequate representation. There were whispers about his work performance, questions about his billable hours. The kidney disease hadn't just affected his health. It had affected his career. And now, with his expensive new wife and his parents' financial pressures, he needed that job more than ever. I spent the next week gathering information, building a file, planning my strategy. Mrs. Cooper thought I was having some kind of breakdown, but I had never felt more focused in my life. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the wedding, I received an unexpected visitor. Heather Simon, she was using her married name now, stood on my doorstep in a white sundress and designer sunglasses, looking like she was posing for a magazine shoot. "Hello, Amanda," she said with a bright smile. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I felt like we should talk." I invited her in, served her coffee in my best china and let her talk. She was good, I had to give her that. The perfect combination of sympathetic and condescending. "I want you to know that I never intended for things to happen this way," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee with delicate precision. "Cyrus and it just happened. Sometimes love can't be controlled." "Love," I repeated. "I know this must be difficult for you. But I hope in time we can be friends. For Harmony's sake, if nothing else. Friends. I want to be a good stepmother to her. She's such a sweet little girl." Stepmother. She was already positioning herself as Harmony's new mother figure. "Of course, I understand that you'll always be her biological mother," Heather continued. "No one can take that away from you. But children need stability, and Cyrus and I can provide that in ways that might be difficult for you right now." "Because I'm damaged," I said. Her smile flickered slightly. "I wouldn't put it that way. But yes, your recent health issues do raise concerns. Cyrus is worried about you, you know. We both are." "How thoughtful. I hope you won't make this difficult, Amanda. For everyone's sake." The divorce doesn't have to be contentious. Cyrus is prepared to be very generous with the settlement. Define generous. Enough to help you start over somewhere new. Maybe a fresh start would be good for you. A chance to find yourself again. Somewhere new. Away from Cyrus, away from Harmony, away from everything I had ever called home. I'll think about it, I said. Heather finished her coffee and stood to leave. At the door she turned back with that perfect smile. Oh, and Amanda. Thank you. For saving Cyrus's life, I mean. If you hadn't donated your kidney, I never would have gotten to marry the love of my life. She left and I stood in my doorway watching her drive away in her red Mustang convertible. The same car I had seen her in that day outside the Simon mansion. The same car she had been driving while I was recovering from surgery to save her husband's life. That night I made my decision. I called Reed, the divorce lawyer. I want to contest the divorce, I said. All of it. Custody, property division, everything. Mrs. Simon, we discussed this. You don't have the resources to fight a prolonged battle. I don't need resources, I said. I have something better. What's that? The truth. I filed my response to the divorce papers on Monday morning. Not the standard response Reed had prepared, but something much more comprehensive. Something that included a detailed timeline of Cyrus's affair, documentation of his bigamous marriage, and a formal request for a criminal investigation. By Tuesday afternoon, the story was front-page news in the local paper. Local attorney charged with bigamy after marrying mistress. The article was thorough and devastating. It detailed how Cyrus had married Heather Stewart while still legally married to the woman who had donated a kidney to save his life. It mentioned the rushed timeline, the lavish wedding, the family's attempt to pressure me into signing away my rights. It painted me as the wronged wife and devoted mother who had literally given part of herself to save an ungrateful husband. The public response was immediate and brutal. Social media exploded with outrage. The story was picked up by regional news stations. Someone started a GoFundMe page for my legal expenses that raised $10,000 in the first day. But more importantly, the authorities took notice. District Attorney Rachel announced that her office would be investigating the bigamy charges. The State Bar Association opened an ethics investigation into Cyrus's conduct. Immigration Services began looking into whether Heather's quickie marriage was part of some larger scheme. By Wednesday, Cyrus's law firm had placed him on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigations. I was washing dishes when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. You bastard. Catherine Simon's voice was shaking with rage. You vindictive, spiteful bitch. Hello, Catherine. How was the wedding? You've destroyed him. Are you happy? You've destroyed our family's reputation, Cyrus's career, everything we've worked for. I've simply told the truth, I said calmly. Cyrus chose to commit bigamy. I just made sure people knew about it. He made a mistake. One mistake, and you're trying to ruin his entire life. One mistake. I set down the dish I was washing and focused entirely on the conversation. Catherine, your son had an affair while I was being tested to donate my kidney. He planned his second marriage while I was recovering from surgery to save his life. He tried to steal my daughter and leave me homeless. Which part of that was a mistake? The bigamy was a mistake. The wedding was supposed to wait until after the divorce was final. The lawyers miscommunicated, the dates got confused. So you admit it was planned. There was silence on the other end of the line. You admit that while I was in the hospital, recovering from donating my kidney to save your son's life, your family was planning his wedding to another woman. Amanda, please. Think about what you're doing. This isn't just hurting Cyrus. It's hurting Harmony too. Do you want your daughter to grow up knowing her father is in prison? I want my daughter to grow up knowing her mother isn't a doormat. I hung up. An hour later my phone rang again. This time it was Cyrus. Amanda. His voice was different. Strained. Desperate. We need to talk. Do we? Please. I'm asking nicely. Can we meet somewhere? Discuss this like adults. Adults don't commit bigamy, Cyrus. It was a mistake. A legal technicality. The lawyers. The lawyers what? Forgot you were still married to me? Forgot that divorce papers don't become effective the moment they're served. Amanda, please. I'm begging you. Drop the charges. Let's work this out privately. Like you worked out your affair privately? Like you worked out your second marriage privately? I'll give you whatever you want. More money, better custody arrangements, anything. Just make this go away. I want our marriage back, I said. I want the last 6 months to be undone. I want my kidney back. He was quiet for a long moment. You know I can't do that. Then we have nothing to discuss. Amanda, wait. Don't hang up. His voice cracked slightly. Please. Tell me what it will take. What do you really want? What did I want? I wanted him to suffer the way I had suffered. I wanted him to feel helpless and betrayed and discarded. I wanted him to understand what it meant to give everything to someone who saw you as disposable. But I couldn't say that. I want justice, I said instead. What does that mean? It means you made your choice, Cyrus. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. Murphy Simon showed up at my door with a briefcase full of cash, offering to make this whole mess disappear, if I would just be reasonable. I told him to take his money and leave. Heather called, crying, begging me to think about what I was doing to an innocent woman who had just fallen in love. I reminded her that she had fallen in love with a married man and suggested she choose her partners more carefully in the future. Their lawyer, a high-powered attorney from the state capital, sent me increasingly threatening letters about defamation and harassment and the consequences of filing false charges. I forwarded them all to the district attorney's office. But the most interesting call came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Simon? This is Dr. Howard. Hello, Dr. Howard. How can I help you? I've been following the news coverage of your situation. I wanted to reach out because I'm concerned about how this might be affecting your recovery. I'm fine, doctor. Physically, anyway. Good. That's good. He paused. Mrs. Simon, I don't usually get involved in my patients' personal lives, but I feel I need to tell you something. What's that? Your husband came to see me last week. He was asking about your prognosis, your limitations, whether the kidney donation would affect your ability to have more children. My blood ran cold. What did you tell him? The truth. That while there are some increased risks with future pregnancies, they're manageable with proper care. That you should make a full recovery from the surgery. That there's no medical reason you couldn't live a completely normal life. But his family is saying. His family is lying, Dr. Howard said bluntly. Mrs. Simon, I've been doing organ transplants for 20 years. I've seen donors bounce back from this surgery and run marathons, have multiple children, live well into their 80s. What you did was heroic, but it doesn't make you an invalid. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The medical reports in the divorce papers, the claims about my compromised health, the suggestions that I was unfit to care for Harmony, it was all fabricated. They had built their custody case on lies. Dr. Howard, would you be willing to testify to that? In court, I mean. Absolutely. And Mrs. Simon? I think what your husband and his family are doing is despicable. You saved that man's life. You deserve better than this. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time thinking. The bigamy charges were just the beginning. With Dr. Howard's testimony, I could prove that the custody evaluation was based on false medical information. I could expose the entire web of lies they had constructed. But something else was bothering me. Something about the timeline, about how perfectly everything had been orchestrated. I pulled out my laptop and started digging deeper into Cyrus's medical records. As his wife, I still had access to his patient portal and no one had thought to revoke it. What I found there changed everything. Cyrus's kidney disease hadn't been diagnosed in March as he had told me. According to his medical records, he had known about it for over a year. There were test results dating back 18 months, specialist consultations, multiple treatment options that had been explored and rejected. He had known he was dying long before the doctor confirmed it. And according to the consultation notes, he had been told from the beginning that a living donor transplant was his best option. The doctors had recommended that he discuss it with his family, start the compatibility testing process, begin preparing for the surgery. But he hadn't told me. Instead, he had started his affair with Heather, set up his new life, prepared his exit strategy. Then, when his condition became too obvious to hide, he had played the devoted husband discovering his illness for the first time. He had let me volunteer for testing, let me go through the evaluation process, let me believe I was making a heroic sacrifice to save the man I loved. when the truth was he had been planning to leave me all along. The kidney donation hadn't been a gift of love. It had been a transaction. My organ in exchange for his silence until he could extract himself from our marriage cleanly. I sat there staring at the computer screen, feeling something shift inside me. The cold anger I had been carrying crystallized into something harder, sharper. Cyrus Simon hadn't just betrayed me. He had used me. He had manipulated my love for him, exploited my devotion, turned my greatest act of selflessness into a tool for his own selfish ends. But he had made one crucial error. He had underestimated what I was capable of when I was truly angry. Armed with the medical records proving Cyrus had lied about his diagnosis timeline, I went back to Mrs. Cooper's detective contacts. If he had lied about that, what else had he been hiding? The answer, it turned out, was everything. "Your husband's been busy," reported Detective Ray Torres, Mrs. Cooper's former partner who had agreed to help me off the books. "The affair with Heather Stewart goes back over a year, not 3 months like we originally thought." We were sitting in Torres's car outside Harmony's preschool. I had an hour before pickup time, and Torres had information that couldn't wait. A year. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, jewelry purchases. All charged to credit cards you probably didn't know existed. He handed me a manila folder. "There's more." I opened the folder and felt my world shift again. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals. Credit card bills I had never seen. A second apartment lease in Cyrus's name alone. "He's been hiding money," Torres explained. "Moving assets, setting up accounts you don't have access to. This divorce wasn't a sudden decision, Amanda. He's been planning it for at least 18 months. 18 months. Before his kidney diagnosis. Before my testing. Before I had any idea our marriage was in trouble." "There's something else," Torres continued. "Something bigger." "What?" "The law firm where he works. They've been hemorrhaging clients. 3 major accounts dropped them in the last 6 months, all citing concerns about Cyrus's performance. Word is the partners have been looking for a reason to push him out. Because of his illness? Because of his work product? Missing deadlines, unprepared for court appearances, billing irregularities. The kidney disease might have been a factor, but the problems started before his health declined. I stared at the papers in my lap. So he's been lying about his job security too. Gets worse. The Stewart family, Heather's people, they don't just have money. Her father owns half the commercial real estate in the city. Word is he's been helping Cyrus with some business opportunities. What kind of business opportunities? The kind that might explain where all that hidden money came from. Torres's radio crackled to life and he had to take a call. While he talked to dispatch, I sat in the passenger seat trying to process everything I had learned. Cyrus hadn't just planned to leave me. He had spent over a year systematically dismantling our life together, hiding assets, building a case for custody, setting up his new relationship. The kidney donation had simply been a convenient way to extract one last valuable asset before discarding me entirely. I thought about all those nights he had come home late claiming he was working. All those weekend work trips that I had never questioned. All those times he had seemed distracted, distant, like his mind was somewhere else. He had been living a completely separate life and I had been too trusting, too naive, too devoted to see it. "Sorry about that," Torres said, finishing his call. "Where were we?" "The business opportunities." "Right. Here's the thing. I can't prove anything yet, but there are some irregularities in how Cyrus has been handling his clients' accounts. Money going in, money going out, timing that doesn't quite add up." "Are you saying he's been stealing from clients?" "I'm saying there are questions that need answers. And with his law firm already looking for reasons to get rid of him, and now the bigamy charges on top of it." Torres shrugged. "Let's just say your husband's problems are bigger than a messy divorce." That evening, after Harmony was in bed, I spread all the documents Torres had given me across my kitchen table. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, apartment leases. The paper trail of my husband's deception. But as I studied the dates and amounts, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. The largest cash withdrawals had all occurred in the weeks leading up to my surgery. The apartment lease had been signed the day after I was approved as a donor. The most expensive jewelry purchases for Heather had been made while I was in the hospital, recovering from giving him my kidney. He hadn't just been planning to leave me. He had been celebrating. Every sacrifice I made, every moment of pain and vulnerability had been a victory for him. A step closer to his new life with his young, healthy, wealthy new wife. My phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello. Amanda, it's Reed. My lawyer sounded excited, which was unusual for him. I just got a call from the district attorney's office. They want to meet with you tomorrow morning. About the bigamy charges? About everything. It seems your husband's legal troubles have attracted some attention from the state attorney general's office. They're looking into his business dealings, his client accounts, some irregularities that go back years. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. What kind of irregularities? The kind that might involve federal charges. Money laundering, client fraud, tax evasion. Amanda, if even half of what they suspect is true, Cyrus could be looking at serious prison time. Good. There's more. They want you to testify before a grand jury. About the timeline of his illness, the divorce proceedings, his attempts to hide assets. Your testimony could be crucial to their case. After Reed hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen and thought about justice. Real justice, not the watered-down version that family court might eventually deliver. Cyrus had used me, betrayed me, tried to steal my daughter and my future. He had turned my greatest act of love into a tool for his own selfish gain. But he had also made a fatal mistake. He had assumed that because I was naive and trusting, I was also weak and helpless. He was about to learn the difference. The grand jury hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. In the meantime, the media coverage of my story had taken on a life of its own. Local news stations were running features on organ donation and the ethics of divorce. National morning shows were calling for interviews. Someone had started a hashtag Justice for Amanda. But the most satisfying development came on Wednesday morning, when Mrs. Cooper arrived with her usual coffee and an unusually satisfied smile. You need to see this, she said, handing me her phone. On the screen was a news article from the financial section. Simon Law Firm under federal investigation for client fund mismanagement. The article detailed how federal investigators were looking into allegations that the firm had misused client trust funds, engaged in questionable business practices, and failed to properly oversee attorney conduct. 3 partners had already resigned, and the firm was expected to face criminal charges within days. Cyrus's career isn't just over, Mrs. Cooper said with satisfaction. His entire law firm is going down. I scrolled through the article, noting the details about systematic financial irregularities and potential criminal liability for individual attorneys. At the bottom was a quote from the firm's remaining managing partner. We are cooperating fully with federal investigators and have terminated our relationship with any attorneys who may have engaged in questionable conduct. Cyrus had been fired. That afternoon my phone rang. Heather Stewart. Amanda, please. You have to stop this. Her voice was strained, desperate. You're destroying innocent people. Innocent people? Cyrus made mistakes, yes. But he doesn't deserve to have his entire life ruined. And I certainly don't deserve to be dragged through the mud for falling in love. You fell in love with a married man who was stealing from his clients, I said calmly. You married him while he was still married to someone else. Exactly which part of that makes you innocent? I didn't know about any financial irregularities. I didn't know he was still legally married to you. His lawyers told me the divorce was final. His lawyers lied. Just like he did. Amanda, please. He was crying now. I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. Cyrus was going to be a father again with her, while I was fighting for custody of the child we already had. Congratulations, I managed. This stress isn't good for the baby. The media attention, the legal problems, all of it. Please, can't we work something out? Can't you find it in your heart to show some mercy? Mercy. I thought about mercy as I hung up the phone. I thought about the mercy I had shown when I donated my kidney to save her husband's life. I thought about the mercy I had expected when I was recovering from surgery and needed his support. I thought about how little mercy Cyrus had shown when he served me divorce papers and tried to take my daughter away. That evening, Detective Torres called with an update. The feds are moving fast, he said. They've frozen Cyrus's accounts, seized his computers and executed search warrants on both his apartment and his parents' house. What are they looking for? Evidence of client fund mismanagement, mainly. but also tax evasion, money laundering, and possible connections to some of Stuart's real estate deals that might not have been entirely legal. Stuart? Heather's father. The same. Turns out Cyrus has been doing legal work for some of Stuart's more questionable business ventures. Shell companies, offshore accounts, property deals that exist mainly on paper. The kind of work that pays very well and doesn't ask too many questions. I felt pieces clicking into place. That's where the hidden money came from. Looks that way. And if the government can prove Cyrus knew he was helping launder money through fake real estate transactions. Torres whistled low. He's looking at 20 years minimum. 20 years. In 20 years, Harmony would be 23. She would be older than Heather was now. There's something else you should know, Torres continued. Word is Cyrus is looking to make a deal. Testify against Stuart in exchange for reduced charges. Will it work? Depends on what he knows and how much the feds want Stuart. But Amanda, if Cyrus does flip, if he starts cooperating with federal investigators, his marriage to Heather is going to get very complicated very fast. What do you mean? I mean spousal privilege won't protect her if she was involved in any of her father's business dealings. And a pregnant woman married to a federal witness isn't exactly living the fairy tale life she signed up for. After Torres hung up, I sat in my living room and watched Harmony play with her blocks. She was building a tower, carefully stacking each piece higher and higher. Look, Mommy. It's really tall. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I make it even taller? You can try. But be careful. The taller it gets, the more likely it is to fall down. She nodded seriously and continued building. I watched her small, careful hands placing each block precisely, her tongue poking out in concentration. Cyrus's tower was getting very tall indeed. And towers built on lies and betrayal always eventually fell. The question was whether I would be content to simply watch it happen, or if I wanted to give it a little push. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully for the grand jury hearing. Conservative blue suit, minimal makeup, wedding ring conspicuously absent from my finger. Reed met me at the courthouse steps. Remember, just answer the questions honestly and directly, he advised as we walked through the marble lobby. Don't volunteer information they don't ask for, but don't hold back anything that's relevant to their questions. What are they going to ask about? Everything. The timeline of Cyrus's illness, his behavior during your recovery, the divorce proceedings, anything you know about his finances or business dealings. The grand jury room was smaller than I had expected, with 23 citizens sitting in 2 rows of chairs. They looked like ordinary people. Teachers, shop owners, retirees, but they held extraordinary power. The power to decide whether Cyrus Simon would face federal charges. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Mitchell led the questioning. She was younger than I had expected, but her manner was crisp and professional. Mrs. Simon, please tell the jury about your husband's kidney disease diagnosis. I told them everything. How Cyrus had claimed to learn about his condition in March. How shocked and devastated he had seemed. How quickly I had volunteered to be tested as a donor. Then I told them about the medical records I had discovered showing he had known about his condition for over a year. In your opinion, Mitchell asked, why do you think your husband concealed his diagnosis from you for so long? Because he was planning to leave me, I said simply. And he needed my kidney first. I heard several jurors shift in their seats. One older woman looked genuinely shocked. Mitchell asked about the affair, the hidden bank accounts, the apartment lease, the timeline of the divorce proceedings. I answered every question with calm precision, letting the facts speak for themselves. Mrs. Simon, during your marriage, did your husband ever discuss his work with you? His clients, his cases, his business dealings? Not in detail. He said attorney-client privilege meant he couldn't discuss specifics. Did he ever mention working with Stuart Real Estate Development? Not by name. But he did mention taking on some high-value clients about 2 years ago. He said it was going to be very lucrative. Do you know anything about how he was paid for this work? He kept separate accounts that I didn't have access to. I didn't know they existed until after he served me divorce papers. Mitchell asked about my recovery from surgery, about Cyrus's behavior during that time, about his parents' involvement in the divorce proceedings. Mrs. Simon, in your opinion, was your husband planning to divorce you before he became ill? I thought about the apartment lease signed the day after I was approved as a donor, About the credit card bills showing expensive dinners and jewelry purchases for another woman while I was being tested to save his life. Yes, I said. I believe he was planning to divorce me long before he told me about his illness. I think he needed my kidney first. The room was completely silent. Mitchell asked a few more questions about dates and documents, then dismissed me with thanks. The entire testimony had taken less than an hour, but I felt drained as if I had run a marathon. Reed walked me to the parking garage afterward. How do you think it went? I asked. You did great. Calm, credible, devastating. He smiled grimly. If I were Cyrus Simon's attorney, I'd be very worried right now. That afternoon, I picked up Harmony from preschool and tried to return to some semblance of normal life. We went to the park, made mac and cheese for dinner, read stories before bed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was waiting for something. Some final shoe to drop. Some last revelation that would complete the picture of Cyrus's betrayal. It came at 8 o'clock in the form of a phone call from Detective Torres. They arrested Stewart, he said without preamble. FBI picked him up at his office 2 hours ago. Heather's father? Money laundering, tax evasion, real estate fraud. The works. And Amanda? Cyrus is already talking. What's he saying? Everything. Names, dates, account numbers, the whole structure of how Stewart was washing money through fake property deals. Your husband kept very detailed records. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. So he's cooperating. Singing like a canary. Which means Heather's family fortune is built on criminal activity. And she's married to the star witness against her father. I thought about Heather's phone call, her tears, her claims of innocence. Her pregnancy. Her perfect life that was now crumbling around her. What happens now? Well, Cyrus will probably avoid the worst of the federal charges in exchange for his cooperation. But he'll still face disbarment, civil lawsuits from his clients, and the bigamy charges you filed. And Heather? Depends on how much she knew about Daddy's business. But either way, she's about to find out what it's like to be married to a federal witness. New identity, witness protection, constant security threats. Not exactly the fairy tale she signed up for. After Torres hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. Somewhere across town, Cyrus was probably in a federal detention center, explaining to prosecutors how he had helped launder millions of dollars through fake real estate deals. Somewhere else, Heather was probably crying into her pillow, wondering how her perfect new life had turned into a nightmare. And somewhere, Catherine and Murphy Simon were probably having their first real conversation about what it meant to have a son who was a federal witness against a criminal organization. I sipped my wine and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not because it was over. It wasn't over yet. But because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one whose life was falling apart. The news broke on Friday morning. Real estate mogul arrested in multi-million-dollar money laundering scheme. Stewart's mugshot was on the front page of every newspaper in the state. The article detailed how federal investigators had uncovered a complex network of shell companies, fake property transactions, and offshore accounts designed to hide the proceeds of various criminal enterprises. And prominently mentioned in every article was the fact that Stewart's son-in-law, attorney Cyrus Simon, was cooperating with federal prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges. My phone started ringing before I finished my morning coffee. Reporters wanting comments, lawyers wanting to represent me, people from my past wanting to reconnect now that my story was national news. I ignored them all and took Harmony to the zoo. Look, Mommy. Monkeys. We spent the morning watching animals, eating overpriced snacks and pretending that life was normal. For a few hours, I almost forgot about federal investigations and divorce proceedings and kidney donations that had changed everything. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Cooper. Turn on Channel 7 when you get home. You need to see this. The afternoon news was running a special report on the Stewart investigation. But what caught my attention wasn't the footage of FBI agents carrying boxes out of Stewart's office. It was the interview with Heather Simon. She looked terrible. Her perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. She was visibly pregnant now, her designer clothes replaced by an oversized sweater that couldn't hide her growing belly. I had no idea, she told the reporter, her voice shaking. About my father's business dealings, about the money laundering, about any of it. I'm as shocked as everyone else. What about your husband's involvement? Cyrus was just doing legal work for my father's company. He didn't know the transactions were illegal. The reporter pressed harder. But federal prosecutors say your husband kept detailed records of the money laundering operation. How could he not know what he was documenting? Heather's composure cracked. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. My whole life has been turned upside down by lies and accusations and people who want to destroy my family. Are you referring to your husband's first wife, Amanda Simon, who donated a kidney to save his life? That woman has done nothing but cause trouble from the beginning. She's vindictive and jealous, and she's using the media to hurt innocent people. I turned off the television and sat in my living room, processing what I had just seen. Heather was cracking under pressure. The perfect life she had stolen from me was becoming a nightmare, and she was looking for someone to blame. That someone was me. Which meant this wasn't over yet. That evening, after Harmony was asleep, I received an unexpected visitor. Through the peephole I could see Murphy Simon standing on my front porch, looking older and more haggard than I had ever seen him. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Amanda. His voice was hoarse, defeated. Please. We need to talk. About what? About ending this. About finding a way forward that doesn't destroy what's left of our family. I studied his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. Your family destroyed itself, Murphy. I just made sure people knew about it. My son is facing federal charges because of you. Your son is facing federal charges because he laundered money for criminals. I didn't make him do that. Murphy stepped closer and I could smell alcohol on his breath. He's talking to federal prosecutors. Do you understand what that means? He's betraying his wife's family to save himself. Sounds familiar, I said. Betraying family to save himself. Catherine doesn't know yet. About the extent of his cooperation. About what he's telling them. Murphy's voice dropped to a whisper. About what might happen to Stuart, to Heather, to all of us. What do you want from me, Murphy? Call off the divorce contest. Drop the custody fight. Take the settlement we offered and disappear. And in exchange? In exchange, I'll make sure you and Harmony are taken care of. Financially. For life. I almost laughed. You're trying to buy me off? Again. I'm trying to protect what's left of this family. Including Harmony. Harmony is my daughter. Harmony is Cyrus's daughter too. And if this investigation continues, if the media circus keeps growing, what kind of life is she going to have? What kind of legacy are we leaving her? The manipulation was subtle but clear. If I continued to fight, I would be hurting my own daughter. Goodbye, Murphy, I said and closed the door in his face. But his words stayed with me. Not because I believed them, but because they revealed how desperate the Simon family was becoming. Desperate people do dangerous things. Saturday morning brought rain and an urgent call from Detective Torres. We need to meet, he said. Now. An hour later, I was sitting in Torres's car outside a coffee shop, watching the rain streak down the windshield while he delivered news that made my blood run cold. Heather Simon filed a restraining order against you yesterday, he said. Claims you've been harassing her, threatening her and her unborn child. That's ridiculous. I haven't spoken to her since she called me crying. I know. But she's painted a picture of an unstable woman who blames her for her marriage falling apart. She's claiming you've been following her, making threatening phone calls, endangering her pregnancy through stress. None of that is true. I know it's not true. But the judge doesn't know you, and Heather Simon is a young, pregnant woman whose father was just arrested and whose husband is cooperating with federal prosecutors. She makes a sympathetic victim. I stared out at the rain, trying to process this latest development. What does the restraining order say? No contact, direct or indirect. No approaching within 500 feet. No phone calls, emails, social media posts, or any other form of communication. How does this affect the custody case? Torres's expression was grim. It doesn't help. A judge might see it as evidence that you're emotionally unstable, vindictive, a potential threat to the child's well-being. So she gets to destroy my marriage, steal my husband, and then claim I'm the dangerous one? Amanda, I need you to listen to me carefully. This is a setup. What do you mean? I mean someone is advising Heather Simon, Someone who understands how to manipulate the legal system. The restraining order, the media interviews, the claims about your mental state. This isn't the work of a scared pregnant woman. This is strategic. Who? I don't know yet. But whoever it is, they're good. And they're trying to flip the narrative, make you the villain in this story. Torres handed me a manila folder. There's something else. We've been monitoring Cyrus's communications as part of the federal investigation. Phone calls, emails, visitor logs. I opened the folder and felt the world tilt. Inside were transcripts of recorded phone conversations between Cyrus and various people. His parents, his lawyers, and most damning of all, Heather. The most recent transcript was from Thursday night, the day after my grand jury testimony. Cyrus, how bad is it? Heather, bad. The lawyers say your cooperation will help with the federal charges, but the bigamy case is still going forward. And Amanda isn't backing down on the custody fight. Cyrus, we need to discredit her. Make her look unstable. Heather, I'm already working on that. The restraining order will help. And I have some ideas about the custody evaluation. Cyrus, what kind of ideas? Heather, let's just say Amanda's history of mental health issues is going to become very relevant to this case. Cyrus, she doesn't have a history of mental health issues. Heather, she does now. I stared at the transcript, feeling sick. They're going to fabricate evidence against me. Looks that way. Amanda, you need to be very careful. Document everything, where you go, who you talk to, what you do. Keep receipts, take photos, maintain detailed records. If they're planning to paint you as unstable or dangerous, you need to be able to prove otherwise. What about the restraining order? Follow it to the letter. Don't give them any ammunition. No matter how angry you get, no matter how much you want to confront her, stay away. I drove home through the rain, my mind racing with the implications of what Torres had shown me. Cyrus wasn't just cooperating with federal prosecutors about Stuart's crimes. He was actively conspiring with Heather to destroy my credibility and take my daughter away from me. The man whose life I had saved was now trying to systematically destroy mine. That afternoon, while Harmony napped, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list of everything I needed to do to protect myself and my daughter. Document my daily activities, gather character references, prepare for whatever lies they might invent about my mental health. But as I wrote, I kept thinking about that transcript. About Heather's confident tone, about the way she talked about manipulating the custody evaluation, about her certainty that she could rewrite my history to suit her purposes. She was right about one thing, she did have ideas. But she wasn't the only one. By the time Harmony woke up from her nap, I had a plan of my own. Monday morning, I called in every favor I had ever earned. First, I contacted Dr. Howard and asked him to prepare a comprehensive report on my physical and mental health, both before and after the kidney donation. I needed medical documentation that I was stable, healthy, and fully capable of caring for my daughter. Then I called my old college roommate, Jessica, who was now a family therapist. I need a favor, I told her. A big one. Anything. What do you need? I need a complete psychological evaluation. Official, documented, sealed. I need proof that I'm mentally stable and fit to be a parent. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Amanda, what's going on? I explained the situation. The restraining order, Heather's claims, the threats to my custody of Harmony. They're going to try to paint you as unstable because of the trauma of the divorce and surgery, Jessica said. It's a common tactic in custody cases. Can you help me? More than that. I can recommend you to Dr. Patricia Wells. She's the best family psychologist in the state, and her evaluations carry serious weight in court. If she says you're mentally fit, no judge will question it. Next, I called Mrs. Cooper and asked her to help me document my daily routine. Photos of me taking Harmony to school, grocery receipts, timestamps on my work emails. A complete record of my life that would prove I was a responsible, stable parent. Then I made the most difficult call of all. Read. It's Amanda. I want to file a countersuit. Against whom? Against all of them. Cyrus for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Heather for defamation. The Simon family for conspiracy. Reed was quiet for a long moment. Amanda, that's a very aggressive strategy. It could backfire. They're already trying to destroy me. I might as well fight back. What's your basis for the fraud claim? I told him about the medical records showing Cyrus had hidden his diagnosis, about the evidence that he had planned our divorce for over a year while accepting my kidney donation under false pretenses. He used my love for him as a weapon against me, I said. He manipulated me into donating my kidney by pretending to be a devoted husband who had just discovered he was dying. That's fraud. And the defamation claim against Heather? The restraining order is based on lies. She's claiming I've been harassing and threatening her when she has no evidence because it never happened. She's intentionally damaging my reputation to gain advantage in the custody case. Reed sighed. This is going to get ugly, Amanda. Very ugly. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure I'm not the only one who gets dirty. That afternoon, I met with Dr. Wells for the first of what would be several psychological evaluations. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that put me at ease immediately. Mrs. Simon, I want you to understand that this evaluation is completely confidential unless you choose to use it in court proceedings, she said. My job is to provide an honest assessment of your mental state, not to tell you what you want to hear. I understand. Over the next 3 hours, Dr. Wells asked me about everything. My childhood, my marriage, my relationship with Harmony, my feelings about the divorce and custody battle, my recovery from surgery. She administered psychological tests, asked me to complete detailed questionnaires, and observed my responses to various scenarios involving parental decision-making. At the end of the session, she walked me to the door. Mrs. Simon, I'll have my preliminary report ready in a few days. But I can tell you this, you're handling an extraordinarily difficult situation with remarkable grace and stability. Thank you. I've evaluated hundreds of parents in custody disputes. Most of them are angry, vindictive, focused more on hurting their ex-spouse than protecting their children. She paused. You're not like that. Everything you're doing is focused on what's best for your daughter. That speaks very well of your character. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. But that hope was tested when I arrived home to find a process server waiting on my doorstep. Amanda Simon? Yes. You've been served. The papers were from Heather's lawyers. A motion to modify the restraining order to include restrictions on my access to Harmony, claiming that my unstable behavior posed a potential threat to the child's safety. They weren't just trying to discredit me anymore. They were trying to take my daughter away entirely. The hearing on Heather's motion was scheduled for Friday morning. I spent the week preparing with Reed, gathering evidence, and trying to stay calm despite the growing realization that I was fighting for my life. They're going to claim that your mental state has deteriorated since the surgery, Reed explained as we reviewed my case file. That the stress of the divorce, combined with the trauma of major surgery, has made you unstable and potentially dangerous. Based on what evidence? They don't need much evidence for a temporary modification. Just enough to convince a judge that there's potential risk to the child while they conduct a full evaluation. What kind of full evaluation? Reed's expression was grim. Court-ordered psychological testing, home visits, interviews with neighbors and friends, review of your medical records. They'll put your entire life under a microscope. How long does that take? Once. Maybe a year. A year without primary custody of Harmony. A year of supervised visits and court-appointed monitors and proving over and over again that I was fit to be my own daughter's mother. Thursday evening, I was giving Harmony a bath when she asked the question I had been dreading. Mommy, why doesn't Daddy live here anymore? I had been preparing for this conversation for weeks, but I still didn't know what to say. How do you explain betrayal and divorce and custody battles to a 3-year-old? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, I said carefully. And sometimes those mistakes mean they can't live together anymore. Did you make a mistake? No, sweetheart. Daddy made the mistake. What kind of mistake? I thought about all the lies, all the manipulation, all the ways Cyrus had used my love against me. He forgot how to be kind, I said finally. Harmony considered this seriously. Can he learn again? I don't know, baby. Sometimes people forget important things and can't remember them again. After Harmony was asleep, I sat in my living room going over my testimony for the next day's hearing. Reed had coached me extensively. Answer only the questions asked, don't volunteer information, stay calm no matter what accusations they made. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into an ambush. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed carefully in my most conservative outfit and met Reed at the courthouse an hour before the hearing. "Remember," he said as we walked up the steps, "this is just a preliminary hearing. Even if they get the temporary modification, we can fight it at the full custody trial. And if they don't? Then we go home and wait for them to make their next move." The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Judge Catherine Morrison presided from behind an imposing bench, her gray hair pulled back severely and her expression unreadable. Heather sat at the plaintiff's table with two expensive-looking lawyers. She was dressed in a simple blue dress that emphasized her pregnancy, her hair styled to look softer and more vulnerable than usual. She looked like the perfect victim. Her lead attorney, Richard Hayes, stood to present their case. He was tall, silver-haired, and spoke with the confidence of a man accustomed to winning. "Your Honor, we're here today because of serious concerns about Mrs. Amanda Simon's mental state and her ability to safely care for her minor daughter." He painted a picture of a woman whose life had spiraled out of control. The kidney donation surgery that had left me physically weakened and emotionally unstable. The bitter divorce proceedings that had revealed my vindictive nature. The harassment of his client that had necessitated a restraining order. "Mrs. Simon has shown a pattern of increasingly erratic behavior," Hayes continued. "She has made false accusations against my client, engaged in a media campaign designed to damage reputations, and shown a concerning fixation on revenge rather than the well-being of her child." He presented evidence I had never seen before. Psychiatric reports claiming I was suffering from post-surgical depression and adjustment disorder. Witness statements from neighbors saying I had been seen yelling and crying in my yard. Phone records allegedly showing harassing calls to Heather. All of it lies. All of it fabricated. All of it presented with the smooth confidence of expensive legal representation. When Reed stood to respond, he seemed small and outmatched. "Your Honor, these allegations are completely without merit. Mrs. Simon has never harassed anyone, never made threatening phone calls, never engaged in any behavior that would endanger her child." He presented our evidence. Dr. Howard's medical report showing I was in excellent health. Dr. Wells's preliminary psychological evaluation confirming my mental stability, character references from teachers and neighbors and friends. But Hayes was ready for everything Reed presented. He questioned Dr. Howard's objectivity, given his role in the kidney donation. He suggested that Dr. Wells's evaluation was premature and potentially biased. He cast doubt on every piece of evidence we had so carefully gathered. "Your Honor," Hayes concluded, "we're not asking the court to permanently remove this child from her mother. We're simply asking for temporary protections while a full evaluation can be conducted. Surely the child's safety must be the court's primary concern." Judge Morrison listened to both sides, asked a few clarifying questions, then announced she would recess for 30 minutes to consider her decision. Reed and I waited in the hallway, watching lawyers and clients stream past us toward the elevators. "How do you think it went?" I asked. "Their evidence was very convincing," Reed admitted. "Even though we know it's fabricated, it looked professional and thorough." "What are the chances she'll grant their motion?" 50-50. Maybe worse. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Morrison's expression gave nothing away. "I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties," she began. "While I have some concerns about the allegations made against Mrs. Simon, I also recognize that the court's primary duty is to protect the best interests of the child." My heart sank. "Therefore, I am granting a temporary modification of custody. Mrs. Simon will retain supervised visitation rights with her daughter, to be conducted at the court-approved family center, pending a full psychological and home evaluation." The gavel fell and my world shattered. I had lost. The supervised visitation center was a depressing beige building with fluorescent lights and plastic furniture. Twice a week, for 2 hours each time, I was allowed to see my daughter under the watchful eye of a court-appointed monitor. The first visit was heartbreaking. "Why can't I go home with you, Mommy?" Harmony asked as we sat at a small table playing with donated toys. "Because there are some grown-up problems that need to be figured out first," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What kind of problems?" "Legal problems. Nothing you need to worry about." But she was worrying. I could see it in the way she clung to me when our time was up, in the way she asked the same questions over and over, in the way she had started wetting the bed again according to the reports from her temporary guardians. The temporary guardians were Catherine and Murphy Simon. My daughter was living with the people who had orchestrated my husband's betrayal, and there was nothing I could do about it. The psychological evaluation process was every bit as invasive as Reed had warned. Court-appointed psychologists interviewed me for hours, asking about my childhood, my marriage, my feelings about Cyrus and Heather and the divorce. They visited my house, taking photos and making notes about everything from my refrigerator contents to the books on my shelves. They interviewed Mrs. Cooper, Harmony's teachers, people I hadn't spoken to in years. They wanted to know if I had ever used drugs, ever been treated for mental illness, ever had thoughts of harming myself or others. They asked the same questions over and over, looking for inconsistencies, waiting for me to crack under pressure. But I didn't crack. I answered every question honestly, submitted to every test, cooperated with every invasive inquiry into my life. Because the alternative was losing Harmony forever. Meanwhile, the federal case against Stewart continued to make headlines. Cyrus's cooperation had helped prosecutors uncover a money laundering operation that spanned multiple states and involved millions of dollars in illegal transactions. Stewart was facing life in prison. And Heather was facing the reality of what it meant to be married to a federal witness. She's in witness protection now, Detective Torres informed me during one of our coffee meetings. New identity, new location, federal marshals for protection. What about the pregnancy? Due in 3 months. The baby will be born in hiding with a fake name and no connection to the Stewart family legacy. I should have felt satisfaction at Heather's downfall, but mostly I just felt empty. Her suffering wasn't going to bring my daughter home. There's something else, Torres continued. The federal investigation has turned up some interesting information about the psychological reports used in your custody case. What kind of information? The kind that suggests they might not be entirely legitimate. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in weeks. What do you mean? I mean, one of the psychologists who allegedly evaluated you has been under investigation for falsifying reports in exchange for payment. The feds are looking into whether Stewart's money was used to buy fabricated evidence against you. Can you prove it? Working on it. But Amanda, even if we can prove the reports were fake, it might not be enough to immediately reverse the custody decision. The legal process moves slowly. How slowly? Months. Maybe longer. Months more of supervised visits. Months more of watching my daughter grow up without me. Months more of Catherine Simon poisoning her mind against her own mother. That night I sat in my empty house and thought about giving up. About taking whatever settlement the Simons offered and disappearing. About starting over somewhere far away where no one knew my story. But then I thought about Harmony asking why she couldn't come home with me, and I knew I couldn't quit. I was her mother. Whatever it took, however long it took, I was going to bring her home. 6 weeks into the psychological evaluation process, I received a call that changed everything. Mrs. Simon? This is Dr. Patricia Wells. Dr. Wells, hello. Do you have the results of my evaluation? I do. But first I need to ask you something. Have you ever been treated by a Dr. Martin Fisher? The name was unfamiliar. No, I don't think so. Why? Because there's a psychological report in your court file allegedly written by Dr. Fisher, claiming he treated you for severe depression and anxiety following your surgery. My blood ran cold. I've never seen anyone named Dr. Fisher. That's what I suspected. Mrs. Simon, I need you to come to my office immediately. And bring your lawyer. An hour later, Reed and I sat in Dr. Wells's office listening to information that made my head spin. Dr. Martin Fisher is a psychologist in private practice who has been under investigation by the state licensing board for falsifying psychological reports, Dr. Wells explained. He's been selling fabricated evaluations to lawyers and individuals who want to use them in court proceedings. So the report in my file is fake? Almost certainly. The diagnostic criteria are inconsistent, the timeline doesn't match your actual medical history, and the treatment notes reference sessions that never occurred. Reed leaned forward. Can you prove it's fake? Better than that. Dr. Fisher was arrested yesterday by federal agents as part of the larger investigation into the Stewart money laundering operation. Apparently, he was paid substantial sums to create false psychological profiles for use in legal proceedings. Paid by whom? That's what the FBI is trying to determine. but the timing suggests it's connected to your custody case. I felt a surge of rage so intense it left me breathless. They hadn't just lied about me, they had paid someone to create official lies, complete with fake medical credentials and fabricated diagnoses. There's more, Dr. Wells continued. The other psychological reports in your file show similar inconsistencies. I believe they're all fake. All of them. Every single evaluation that claims you're mentally unstable, emotionally compromised, or unfit to parent. They're all fabricated. Reed was already reaching for his phone. I need to contact the court immediately. This is grounds for an emergency hearing to reverse the custody modification. But Dr. Wells held up a hand. There's something else you need to know. Something bigger. She pulled out a thick folder and set it on her desk. As part of my evaluation, I've been reviewing all the documentation in your case. Not just the psychological reports, but everything. Medical records, financial statements, witness testimonies, the works. And I found a pattern of fabrication and manipulation that goes far beyond fake psychological evaluations. She opened the folder and spread out documents across her desk. The medical reports claiming you're physically compromised after your surgery? Falsified. The financial statements showing you can't support your daughter? The witness statements from neighbors claiming you've been behaving erratically? Several of the supposed witnesses don't even exist. I stared at the papers in shock. How is that possible? Money, Mrs. Simon. A lot of money, spent very systematically to construct a completely false narrative about your fitness as a parent. Reed picked up one of the documents. This is a massive conspiracy. We're not just talking about divorce fraud or custody manipulation. This is organized character assassination. Paid for by whom? I asked, though I thought I already knew the answer. That's the million-dollar question, Dr. Wells said. But based on the timing and the sophistication of the operation, I would guess it's connected to the same criminal organization that's been laundering money through fake real estate deals. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Stewart's criminal organization hadn't just been washing money through property transactions. They had been using their network of corrupt professionals, lawyers, doctors, psychologists, to provide fabricated evidence for legal cases, including mine. So what do we do now? I asked. Reed was already making notes. We file an emergency motion to reverse the custody modification based on fraudulent evidence. We demand an immediate investigation into who paid for the fabricated reports. And we go after everyone involved for conspiracy, fraud, and whatever other charges we can make stick. How long will it take? For the emergency hearing? Maybe a week if we can prove the fraud immediately. For the full investigation and prosecution. He shrugged. Months, maybe years. But Harmony could come home? If we can prove the psychological reports were fabricated, and if we can show the judge that there was never any legitimate basis for removing her from your custody, then yes. She could come home very soon. For the first time in weeks I felt something like hope. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Reed worked around the clock to prepare our motion, while Dr. Wells compiled evidence of the fraudulent psychological reports. Detective Torres provided additional information from the federal investigation, including financial records showing payments from Stewart-controlled accounts to Dr. Fisher and other corrupt professionals. Monday evening, as I sat in my empty house preparing for what might be the most important day of my life, my phone rang. Amanda, it's Catherine Simon. I almost hung up, but something in her voice stopped me. What do you want, Catherine? I want to talk. Please. It's important. We have nothing to talk about. It's about Harmony. Her voice cracked slightly. And about what my family has done to you. Despite my better judgment, I listened. Murphy doesn't know I'm calling, Catherine continued. He would be furious if he found out. But I can't. I can't live with this anymore. Live with what? The lies. The fabricated evidence. What we did to you. My heart started racing. What did you do, Catherine? We paid them. The psychologists, the witnesses, all of it. Stewart offered to handle the legal problems if we could come up with enough money to make the custody case go away. I could barely breathe. You're admitting you framed me? I'm admitting we made a terrible mistake. He was crying now. We were so angry about the federal investigation, about Cyrus's cooperation, about the media attention. We wanted someone to blame, and you were an easy target. Easy target? You were alone with no money, no connections, no way to fight back. Or so we thought. Why are you telling me this now? Because Harmony cries for you every night. Because she asks when she can go home to her mommy and I don't know what to tell her. Because I look at that little girl and realize what we've done to her by taking her away from the only parent who truly loves her. I closed my eyes trying to process what I was hearing. Will you testify? Will you tell the court what you just told me? There was a long pause. I can't. Murphy would disown me. The family would be destroyed. Your family is already destroyed, Catherine. Your son is a federal witness in hiding. Your daughter-in-law is in witness protection. Your husband's business is under federal investigation. How much worse could it get? I need to think about it. You need to do the right thing. For once in your life you need to do the right thing. She hung up and I sat in my kitchen shaking with anger and hope and the terrible possibility that justice might actually be served. Tuesday morning the courthouse was packed. Word had leaked about the fraudulent evidence, and reporters crowded the hallway outside the courtroom. Reed had prepared a devastating presentation. He laid out the evidence systematically: the arrest of Dr. Fisher, the fabricated psychological reports, the fake witness statements, the financial trail connecting it all to the Stewart criminal organization. Your Honor, he concluded, this represents one of the most systematic and malicious attempts to manipulate the judicial system that I have ever encountered. My client has been the victim of an organized conspiracy to deprive her of her constitutional rights as a parent. Hayes, representing Heather, looked rattled for the first time since I'd met him. He tried to argue that even if some evidence had been questionable, there were still legitimate concerns about my fitness as a parent. But his arguments fell flat when Reed presented Dr. Wells's comprehensive evaluation, showing that I was psychologically stable, emotionally healthy, and an excellent mother. Judge Morrison listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence and asked pointed questions about the financial connections between the fabricated reports and the Stewart investigation. Then she called a recess. For 30 minutes, Reed and I sat in the hallway while reporters peppered us with questions we couldn't answer. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. Everything depended on the next few minutes. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison's expression was grim. In 30 years on the bench, I have never seen a more egregious example of judicial manipulation, she began. The evidence presented today clearly shows that this court was misled by fabricated psychological reports, false witness statements, and doctored financial records. My heart soared. Therefore, I am immediately reversing the temporary custody modification. Mrs. Amanda Simon will have full custody of her daughter Harmony, effective immediately. The gavel fell and I burst into tears. For the first time in 2 months I was going to take my daughter home. Harmony was at preschool when I arrived to pick her up. I had called ahead to let them know about the custody reversal, but seeing her run across the playground toward me with a huge smile on her face was the most beautiful moment of my life. Mommy, Mrs. Patricia said I get to come home with you today. I scooped her up and held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling her small arms around my neck. That's right, baby. You're coming home. Forever and ever? Forever and ever. We stopped at the grocery store on the way home and bought everything needed for a celebration dinner. Harmony's favorite chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, chocolate ice cream for dessert. Simple food for a perfect homecoming. That evening, as I watched Harmony play with her toys in her own room, surrounded by her own things, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. She was home. She was safe. He was mine. But the story wasn't over yet. 2 days after Harmony came home, Detective Torres called with news that would complete my revenge in ways I had never imagined. The federal investigation just took a major turn, he said. They found something big. What kind of something? Remember those kidney compatibility tests you had done before your surgery? Of course. Well, it turns out Cyrus had compatibility testing done with other potential donors too, including Heather Stewart. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying Heather was tested as a potential kidney donor for your husband months before you ever knew he was sick. And she was a perfect match too. The words hit me like a physical blow. She could have donated her kidney to save him? She could have. But she chose not to. I sat down heavily trying to process this information. So while I was volunteering to give up my kidney to save his life, His girlfriend was refusing to do the same thing. And he let you do it instead. The full scope of Cyrus's betrayal crashed over me like a wave. He had known that both his wife and his mistress were compatible donors. He had chosen to let me sacrifice my health and undergo major surgery while protecting the woman he actually wanted to be with. I had been disposable to him even then. A convenient source of spare parts. There's more, Torres continued. The medical records show that Heather's refusal to donate was based on concerns about scarring and future pregnancy complications. She didn't want to risk her body for him. But she was fine with me risking mine. Apparently so. I thought about Heather's visit to my house, her sweet smile as she thanked me for saving Cyrus's life so she could marry him. She had known the entire time that she could have saved him herself but had chosen not to. Does Cyrus know that I know about this? Not yet. But Amanda, this information is going to come out in the federal trial. Heather's medical records are part of the evidence against Stewart, and this detail is in there. What will happen to her? Well, she's already in witness protection because of her husband's cooperation. Her father is facing life in prison. Her marriage is effectively over since Cyrus will be in federal witness protection for years. And now this information about her refusing to donate her kidney is going to become public record. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. So her reputation will be destroyed. Completely. No one forgives a woman who could have saved her lover's life but chose to let his wife do it instead. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the kidney compatibility tests, about Heather sitting in some doctor's office making the calculated decision to let me sacrifice myself instead of risking her own perfect body. I thought about Cyrus knowing this and saying nothing, letting me believe I was his only hope while he protected his precious mistress from any real sacrifice. I thought about the phone calls, the planning, the careful orchestration of his new life while I recovered from surgery to save the life he was planning to share with someone else. The next morning brought a phone call I had been expecting. Amanda, it's Reed. The district attorney wants to meet with you. About what? About pressing additional charges against Cyrus and Heather. Fraud, conspiracy, emotional distress. The kidney donation angle has given you grounds for a civil lawsuit that could be worth millions. Millions? You donated an organ under fraudulent pretenses. You were deceived about the necessity of your sacrifice, manipulated into major surgery to benefit people who were actively working against your interests. Any jury would award you substantial damages. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. Set up the meeting. The civil lawsuit made national headlines. Kidney donor sues husband and mistress for fraud. Appeared on front pages across the country. The story had everything that captured public attention. Medical drama, marital betrayal, criminal conspiracy, and a victim who had literally given part of herself to save someone who was planning to destroy her life. Social media exploded with support for me and outrage towards Cyrus and Heather. The hashtag kidney betrayal trended for days. Someone started a legal defense fund that raised over $100,000. But more importantly, the lawsuit gave me access to discovery tools that revealed the full extent of their conspiracy. Under oath, in depositions that were leaked to the media, the truth came out piece by piece. Cyrus admitted that he had known about his kidney disease for over a year before telling me. He admitted that Heather had been tested as a donor and had refused. He admitted that he had planned our divorce before my surgery. Heather, testifying from her witness protection location via video link, admitted that she had known I was donating my kidney while she refused to donate hers. She admitted that she had participated in planning the fabricated evidence for the custody case. Catherine Simon, faced with potential criminal charges for her role in the conspiracy, finally broke and testified about how the family had paid for fake psychological reports and witness statements. Murphy Simon, his business empire crumbling under federal investigation, admitted to financing the character assassination campaign against me. One by one they all fell. But the most satisfying moment came during Cyrus's deposition, when my attorney asked him a simple question. Mr. Simon, do you believe your ex-wife Amanda donated her kidney to you out of love? Cyrus, looking haggard and defeated, stared at the camera for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. And how did you repay that love? I made mistakes. You planned to divorce her while she was being tested to save your life, didn't you? Yes. You hid assets and prepared to take custody of your daughter while she was recovering from surgery to save your life, didn't you? Yes. You married another woman 1 week after serving divorce papers to the woman who gave you her kidney, didn't you? Yes. The video of that deposition played on news programs across the country. Cyrus Simon, the man who had received the ultimate gift of love and repaid it with betrayal, admitting his crimes to the world. The civil lawsuit was settled out of court for an amount that my attorney described as substantial enough to ensure that Amanda and Harmony will never have financial worries again. The criminal cases moved forward with devastating efficiency. Stewart was sentenced to life in prison without parole for money laundering and racketeering. Dr. Fisher received 10 years for fraud and conspiracy. Cyrus, because of his cooperation with federal prosecutors, received a reduced sentence of 3 years in minimum security prison, followed by 5 years in witness protection. Heather faced no criminal charges, but her life was effectively over. Her father was in prison, her husband was a federal witness, and her reputation was destroyed. She had given birth to a daughter in witness protection, a child who would grow up with a fake name and no connection to her family's wealth. Catherine and Murphy Simon were not charged criminally, but they faced civil lawsuits from multiple victims of their conspiracy. Their assets were frozen, their social standing destroyed, their golden years reduced to legal battles and bankruptcy proceedings. But the most poetic justice was yet to come. 18 months after Harmony came home, I received a phone call that brought the story full circle. Amanda, it's Dr. Howard. Hello, doctor. How can I help you? I'm calling with some difficult news. About your ex-husband. My stomach clenched. What about him? His remaining kidney is failing. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. What does that mean? It means he needs another transplant. The kidney you donated is still functioning well, but his original kidney is shutting down completely. I sat down heavily trying to process this information. How is that possible? The same disease that damaged his kidneys originally has progressed. This was always a risk, but we hoped the medication would prevent it. What are his options? Dr. Howard was quiet for a moment. He needs a donor. And given his current circumstances. You mean given that he's a federal witness in prison? That, and the fact that his actions have become public knowledge. It's very difficult to find donors for people who are perceived as unsympathetic. I understood. Who would donate a kidney to save the life of a man who had betrayed his wife's sacrifice so completely. There's something else, Dr. Howard continued. The family has reached out through intermediaries. They're asking if you would consider donating your remaining kidney. The audacity took my breath away. They want me to donate my other kidney? To the same man who tried to steal my daughter and destroy my life. I'm just passing along the message. No one expects you to consider it. But I was considering it. Not because I felt any love or loyalty toward Cyrus, but because the request revealed the complete desperation of his situation. He was going to die. And the people who had helped him betray me were now begging me to save him again. Dr. Howard, what would happen to me if I donated my remaining kidney? You would need dialysis for the rest of your life or eventually your own kidney transplant. It would significantly impact your quality of life and your life expectancy. And what will happen to Cyrus if he doesn't get a transplant? He'll die within 6 months. Maybe less. That evening, I sat Harmony down and explained that her father was sick again. Is Daddy going to die? She asked with the matter-of-fact curiosity of a 4-year-old. I don't know, sweetheart. He might. Are you going to save him again? The question that had been haunting me all day, asked by my daughter with perfect innocence. I don't think so, baby. I don't think I can save Daddy this time. She nodded solemnly and went back to playing with her dolls. The next morning brought a phone call from Catherine Simon. Her voice was different than I had ever heard it. Broken, desperate, stripped of all arrogance. Amanda, please. I'm begging you. Begging me for what, Catherine? To save my son's life. Again. I almost laughed at the irony. The same son you helped frame for custody fraud? The same son whose lies you supported? That son. I know what we did was wrong. I know we don't deserve your help. But please think about Harmony. She's going to lose her father. Harmony's father made his choices. He chose to betray me, lie to me, try to steal her away from me. Why should I sacrifice my life to save someone who tried to destroy hers? Because you're a better person than we are, Catherine said simply. Because even after everything we've done to you, You have a good heart. My good heart already gave him one kidney. He used that gift to plan my destruction. Amanda, I'll do anything. Give you anything. I'll sign over the house, the investments, everything. Just please don't let my son die. Your son is dying because of his own choices, Catherine. Just like I almost lost my daughter because of his choices. Please. He was crying now. I'm an old woman begging you to show mercy to my child. Haven't we all suffered enough? I hung up without answering. But her words stayed with me. Haven't we all suffered enough? Had they suffered? Really suffered the way I had suffered when they tried to take Harmony away from me? Catherine and Murphy had lost their social standing and their money, but they still had each other. They still had their freedom. Heather had lost her family's wealth and her perfect life, but she had her health and her child. Cyrus was facing death, yes, but he had brought it on himself through years of lies and betrayal. Had any of them truly paid the price for what they had done to me? That afternoon I called Reed. I want to make a public statement, I told him. About what? About Cyrus's condition. About the family's request that I donate my remaining kidney. Reed was quiet for a moment. Amanda, whatever you're planning, think carefully. The media attention around this is going to be intense. I'm counting on it. 2 days later, I stood in front of a crowd of reporters and cameras, with Harmony playing quietly nearby, and delivered a statement that would be remembered for years. My ex-husband Cyrus Simon is dying, I began. His family has asked me to donate my remaining kidney to save his life. They have offered me money, property, and appeals to my better nature. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. 2 years ago, I donated my kidney to save this man's life because I loved him and believed he loved me. While I was recovering from that surgery, he was planning to divorce me and take my daughter away from me. He had been having an affair for over a year. His girlfriend could have donated her kidney too, but chose not to risk her own body. Murmurs rippled through the crowd of reporters. Cyrus Simon used my love as a weapon against me. He turned my greatest act of selflessness into a tool for his own selfish gain. He and his family then spent hundreds of thousands of dollars creating false evidence to steal my child from me. I paused, looking directly into the cameras. Now they want me to give up my remaining kidney, to sacrifice my life and my daughter's future, to save a man who tried to destroy us both. The crowd was completely silent now. My answer is no. The statement exploded across social media and news outlets. Hashtag No Second Chances became a rallying cry for people who felt I had already given enough. Others criticized me for letting a man die when I had the power to save him. But I didn't care about public opinion. I cared about justice. And justice, in this case, meant letting Cyrus Simon face the consequences of his choices. Cyrus Simon died 4 months later, alone in a federal medical facility, with only a prison guard and a chaplain present. His family was not allowed to visit due to his witness protection status. Heather, still in hiding with their daughter, was not permitted to attend the funeral. I did not attend the funeral either. Instead, I spent that day at the park with Harmony, watching her play on the swings and teaching her how to skip stones across the pond. "Mommy, is Daddy really gone forever now?" she asked as we walked home. "Yes, sweetheart. Daddy is gone. Will I forget him?" I thought about that question for a long time. You might forget some things about him, but you'll always remember that he was your daddy and that he loved you. It was the kindest truth I could offer her. Whatever Cyrus had done to me, he had been her father. She deserved to remember him with love, not bitterness. That night, after Harmony was asleep, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. 2 years ago, I had been a naive wife who believed in love and sacrifice and happily ever after. I had given away part of my body to save a man who saw me as expendable. Now I was a woman who had fought for her daughter, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and watched justice be served in the most poetic way possible. The man who had used my love as a weapon had died alone, abandoned by everyone he had betrayed others to protect. The woman who had refused to risk her own body but was willing to let me risk mine was living in hiding with a fake name and no future. The family that had tried to steal my daughter was bankrupt and disgraced. And I was free. Free from lies and manipulation and false promises. Free from people who saw my love as weakness and my sacrifices as entitlement to more sacrifices. Free to build a new life with my daughter, a life based on honesty and genuine love and the knowledge that we had survived the worst that people could do to us and come out stronger. Harmony is 9 years old now, a bright, confident child who loves school and soccer and painting pictures of our life together. She remembers her father vaguely as children do, but she knows that her mother fought for her when it mattered most. We live in a beautiful house in a good neighborhood, purchased with the settlement money from the civil lawsuit. I run a successful graphic design business from my home office, and Harmony attends a private school where she's thriving academically and socially. Mrs. Cooper still visits every week, bringing coffee and gossip and the wisdom of someone who has seen the full arc of this story from beginning to end. You did the right thing, she tells me sometimes when the topic of Cyrus's death comes up. You had already given him everything. You didn't owe him your life too. I know she's right. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder what would have happened if I had made a different choice. If I had donated my second kidney, would Cyrus have somehow found redemption? Would forgiveness have been more powerful than justice? Then I look at Harmony, healthy and happy and secure in the knowledge that her mother will always fight for her, and I know I made the right choice. Love is not about endless sacrifice. Love is not about giving until there's nothing left of yourself. Love is about protecting what matters most, even when that protection requires saying no to people who think they deserve your forgiveness. I learned that lesson the hard way, paid for it with pain and betrayal and the kind of suffering that changes you forever. But I learned it. And in the end, that knowledge was worth more than any kidney I could have given. The rain that started this story has long since stopped. The storm has passed, leaving clear skies and the promise of better days ahead. Harmony and I are ready for whatever comes next. Together we can weather any storm. After all, we've already survived the worst one of all.